enterprise governance versus information security. Here we will just get to note that risk optimization is a key element of governance. And since we are looking at information security management, the elements that we need to be clear about and be able to differentiate in the pursuit of, as we continue with the program. So one of which then now we want to look at enterprise governance versus information security governance. So here we are basically saying that enterprise governance is about exercising the responsibilities to enable provision of strategic direction. So risk optimization basically is a key element of governance and management of enterprise IT. Management activities basically and structures which are distinct from and derived from governance are outlined in the information security strategy, basically. So if you were to distinguish the roles between enterprise governance and information security governance, we see that governance basically is to ensure objectives of the enterprise are achieved, determining appropriate risk management, and verification of that the enterprise resources are used responsibly. Whereas when we talk about information security governance, basically what we get to know is that it's a subset. One is a subset of corporate governance. Information security governance is a subset of corporate governance, and it provides a strategic direction for security activities. It ensures objectives are achieved. It also ensures that information security risk is appropriately managed. When we talk about information security risk, here we are looking at the threats, the underlying threats that would exist in the environment in which the enterprise operates. So when we talk about governance of information security, we are looking at the mechanisms or means that have been put in place to ensure that the risks are appropriately managed. Things like policies, procedures, etc. And we'll see that ahead. There's also the element of the effectiveness and how the enterprise resources are used essentially for efficiency and effectiveness. So that talks about the enterprise governance versus information security governance. So when we move on next, looking at the relationship of governance elements. Now we have on our left, there's the IT aspect, mainly concerned with performance of technology assets. And on the right, we have information security, which is mainly concerned with managing risk to an acceptable level. So we have elements such as outcomes, which are defined or they are established, outcomes, the requirements and objectives. These are established through or need to be established through senior management. Then strategy can then now be developed. Conceptual security strategy can be developed, and it comes up now from the architecture of the the strategy would then inform the logical architecture and then leads to a roadmap, which defines the control objectives and physical architecture. Standards and procedures would then now can be outlined, which are input into the operational architecture. So these elements in the security path have a relationship with the IT path as well. So I guess that's what you can see there. The IT, the IT line, the information security line on the right side, those two tall columns. Then we look at the control objectives that come up, which therefore then move into there's a conceptual architecture, the logical architecture, physical architecture, and the operational architecture. So that basically gives relationships of various elements in the governance of IS, information systems. Okay. So at least I guess so far we are okay there. Today we will start with we will have our questions flowing through just to keep us alive. So this is a question that would talk about what is the purpose of an information security strategy? What is the purpose of an information security strategy? Anybody wants to try?
Can you give us a moment to read it, please? Thank you.
Okay, sure.
I will opt for A.
Okay, that is one. Any other?
I'll go with D.
Okay. And the other?
I think I'll stick to A, express the goals of an information security program and the plan to achieve them, which sounds like a strategy.
Okay, exactly. So actually the correct answer is A. The purpose of an information security strategy is to express the goals of an information security program and the plan to achieve them. So basically, A is correct, and I guess I think one of the colleagues mentioned D. Authorize the steps and procedures necessary to protect critical information systems. So strategy does not deal with that. The correct answer is A. So because A says the purpose of strategy, from just what we've got, that purpose of strategies sets out the goals of the information security program and how to achieve those objectives or goals. So the correct answer is A. Okay. Now, if we are to move next, looking at the security strategy overview, it basically provides the plan of action used by the information security manager to accomplish the enterprise goals and objectives or outlines. It provides the plan of action to accomplish the enterprise goals and outlines structures. So one of strategy overview would be that. Then for the strategy to be successful, then it must consider senior management responsibility to respond to complex and potentially destructive IS issues. So what we need to be aware of, and I think we all know that many significant losses arise from insiders, not just external attacks. Many significant losses, and maybe I'll just give us time to discuss maybe when we are through with the circles. Many significant losses arise from insider threats. Like we talked about yesterday, the Chinese, the controllers are as strong as the people themselves. So you get to, I guess in your organizations, there are instances where you find individuals who are the main perpetrators of fraud. For instance, I would give you an example I'll give you an example of Kenya, and I guess the disclaimer I put yesterday still applies, where all information given is for purposes of learning. A few years ago, the mobile network subscriber operator, the mobile network operator, there have been a lot of instances where the SIM cards are taken over by third parties. You have your phone and you have your SIM card, and you find all of a sudden your SIM card goes blank and you can't operate your phone. And the next moment when it comes back on, you see now messages coming in thanking you for taking loans, mobile loans, and thanking you for taking overdraft facilities, and thanking you for accessing your bank account. I don't know whether you've had that experience in your countries. Maybe you could just pause a bit and hear from you. Not just mobile phones, but any example of insider. Sorry?
No, I didn't have such experience with the mobile phone.
Okay, what about just any experience around insider? I was giving an example of insider threats.
Actually, in my case, yes, I haven't faced it per se, but yes, in our country, whether it is in the Middle East or India, in different regions, as head of IT, I have experienced this issue multiple times. And one of the insider attacks which happens is sheer ignorance or lack of awareness in terms of security threats, phishing attacks where you get emails which look like the original email from a vendor or a partner, but it is actually a phishing email which has led to data leaks at various points. So yes, insider threat at times knowingly and at times unknowingly, there has been data leaks and there have been issues at various points in various organizations.
I mean, the phishing emails are quite common these days, right? So I guess every organization gets them these days, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Every organization is facing that challenge. So insider threat, that is a major insider threat. And no matter how hard you try to, I mean, you can only mitigate it to a certain extent. But again, these cyber criminals are quite intelligent. So they come up with new ways of how to bypass whatever setup we have done, whatever new setup. I mean, even the world's biggest organizations are still facing the same threat. So I don't think it is going to be security is never going to be 100% foolproof. There's always going to be a loophole in every security setup.
Yes, true. And you remember many of these criminals, most of them are former colleagues, they are workers for many of these organizations, telcos, banks, hospitals, entertainment industries, all manner of sectors. So they get to know, they already are familiar with the inside dealings of many of the organizations, and they're able to continue perpetrating their activities, even with the collision with the newer staff who come in or take advantage, as you say, of the staff who are not aware. So that is actually a big, it's a big issue in organizations. So what therefore it means that controls used to detect anomalies, and controls are used to detect anomalies and must consider non-technical attacks from insiders. So it is important to integrate with the current governance processes in place so that other critical enterprise resources are taken into consideration. And it's especially true for monitoring and reporting processes. So the current governance processes in place need to be integrated with the other critical enterprise resources, and that would help for monitoring and reporting purposes. So a good strategy basically should reduce risk to acceptable levels while optimizing resources and addressing the legal and regulatory requirements. Legal and regulatory requirements will always come in. There are situations where probably the legal requirements or legal frameworks may not be up to date in a country, or probably like we talked about the multinational organizations which could be operating outside their parent country, but then where the controls are usually adhered to, they would benchmark against the legal requirements from the host country. For instance, I can give example of multinational financial institutions whose parent companies are outside, say Kenya, for instance. In a number of instances where you find the local regulation is weak or non-existent, the company is usually would adopt, as a part of a security strategy, they would adopt compliance with the parent company's regulations. So you talk of either the regulations of the host country or parent company, whichever is higher or stringent, where there's a gap. So this basically means we do not want to leave a gap hanging anywhere. So where local environment does not have legal or regulatory requirements or guidelines, then you may have to, you actually would benchmark with your parent company or your company of where the country of origin, the controls that are, I mean, the requirements that exist or are defined in those countries. So,
Excuse me.
Yes.
All right, just checking. Is everyone else able to see the screen? For me, I think I'm having technical issues today. The screen is blank
no
for me.
Problems. Yes, I have no problems.
Sorry?
The screen is blank for me. Okay,
now
Kasia.
we can see it. I can see it, yeah.
All right, so then I think it's from my end. I'll just log in again. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay, maybe. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's just good to give the feedback.
Sure.
It's good. Yeah, good to give the feedback. Because
all right, now I'm able to see it.
Oh, you're able to see it, eh?
Yes, now I'm able to see it.
Okay, what about if I expand it? Are you able to see it now still?
Yes, yes. I think it just happened intermittently. Okay. It was fine earlier. It just happened all of a sudden. So I think there's a screen problem. I mean, an app problem from my side. Please
no,
continue.
It's okay. It's allowed. Yeah, these are the challenges that exist with the online trainings. Okay,
yes.
Okay, it's fine. Exactly. Now, a good strategy should also demonstrate support for the business objectives of the enterprise to basically maximize stakeholder value. So basically, the strategy should be aligned to what the enterprise objectives are. And we will see ahead even some of the questions that will be asked ahead, or we will answer ahead. You will see where there's need to have the business objective of the enterprise aligned with the information security strategy. So the overall goal of security is business process assurance, and that does not, there's no exception to any business. So the overall goal of security is the business process assurance, and this helps protect the value and enable value creation as defined by the enterprise. Okay. So we have what we call one approach to take as a start to information security strategy is to implement what we would call a maturity model. So we have the CMMI capability maturity model integration, which here it notes that the strategy should include an integrated, it should include methods to ensure an integrated and repeatable approach to governance and management. Okay. Then the model also talks about the CMMI. It helps optimize value by fostering more enterprise cooperation and collaboration. So within the enterprise itself, there's collaboration and there's cooperation. It brings the various entities or sub-entities within the enterprise working together. It also helps the enterprise to understand the current maturity levels, and also would act as a guide to the enterprise towards more optimized business results. Okay, so that is one of the approaches that we could take to start an information security strategy. Okay. So when we talk about then now the development, based on what has been discussed, the strategy will provide a plan of action, basically. And the plan of action which informs the security manager will help then accomplish the enterprise needs. So this information security strategy includes the enabling the enterprise to achieve an acceptable level of risk while optimizing resources. So there are several inputs to determine the necessary elements of information security strategy. This include, if you look at is it the hexagon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexagons, octagon? Okay, the shape on the right side. It talks about the business goals and objectives, and the means to achieve them. So the strategic direction of the business is defined by the objectives set forth in the strategy. So there have to be objectives in the strategy. To be then of value, then the information security must support the business strategy and the activities that take place to achieve the objective. So what are these activities that take place? So that strategy should be able to align itself or to be aligned to ensure it supports the business goals and objectives. And we also have the information security objectives themselves, strategy objectives, the goals of which are to help the enterprise achieve the overall goals, meaning it must be defined and metrics developed to determine if those objectives are being achieved. And maybe we'll look at this in the later slides ahead. Now, when we talk about the objective and business integration, so here we're basically saying if information security strategy is the basis for the plan, then it is necessary to define those objectives. So defining long-term objectives is necessary for a number of reasons. Of course, without a well-articulated vision, then the desired outcomes will not be possible to develop a meaningful strategy. So part of the strategy development process also will look at the current conditions and then the desired state where this is where we want to be. It's actually used to denote the complete snapshot of all relevant conditions at a particular point in future. So it must include the things like the principles, policies, frameworks, processes, structures. I think we talked about culture, ethics, behavior, etc., etc. Then things like the infrastructure and applications, people, skills, and competencies. Okay, so that would cover the information strategy development process, starting with objectives, goals, and objectives, which need to be aligned to the enterprise objectives. Looking at then the information security itself, its objectives. Looking at the business, how these objectives can be met by the various areas of the enterprise. That is the business integration. Looking at the current conditions, and then coming up with the desired future state or the desired state. So it's a future point or a snapshot of a particular point in the future. And for a robust picture, we talk about it includes the policies, procedures, etc. Okay. So then now next is the strategy objectives. When we talk about the strategy objectives, the first question that must be answered, what is the goal of the strategy? And ultimately, the program that it enables. What are the strategies? What are the goals of the program? So there has to be a definition of the objectives and the metrics that accompany that. So metrics need to be developed to determine if those objectives are being achieved. So like we said, or is commonly said, that what cannot be measured cannot be done. Okay. So typically there are some defined outcomes, about 6, of security governance, which will provide high-level guidance. So we talk about strategic alignment. We talk about effective risk management. These are now the outcomes. We talk about value delivery. There's resource optimization, performance measurement, and assurance process integration. So strategy would then need to address each of these selected areas. What do they mean to the enterprise? And how can the outcome of each be achieved? And what will constitute success? So we define success criteria. What will constitute success? So this will require processes to identify relevant information, to form a data plan to protect the information deemed most necessary and critical and sensitive. Okay, so we've seen the 6 defined outcomes, what the strategy needs to address, and what are the objectives and goals of the program. Okay, so to keep us still alive, we have our questions today. We have many of them. Our security strategy is important for an enterprise, primarily because and I just want to re-emphasize, you've seen the word primarily in capital letters. So I'll give you 1 minute to read through, and whoever is ready can answer.
I would opt for B.
Okay, that's one answer.
I'll also go with B.
Okay.
Can you put the
Any-
screen back on? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
admitting
admitting
Raj.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, it's between A or B.
Yeah, I like that answer. That's good answer. Between A and B. We'll come to those type of questions which will have several answers.
I'll stick with B as well.
B, yeah? Okay.
I think I rejected A because it focuses only on best logical security, and security strategy is not just about logical security.
Hello.
It's, yeah, that's why I excluded that.
Hello. I'm back again. Sorry, guys. I keep getting this intermittent disconnection.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. So I'm actually shuffling between. Okay. So
it's B for me as well. That's what I was saying earlier. I don't think you heard it.
Okay. So the correct answer is actually B. Now B talks about a security strategy is important for an enterprise primarily because it provides the approach to achieving the outcomes that the management wants. So it should be a statement of how security aligns with basically a security strategy should be a statement of how security aligns with and supports business objectives. It provides the basis for good governance. Now, if you look at A, policies have to be developed to support security strategy, and architecture can only be developed after policies are completed. So A is out. So C talks about policy strategy, provides user guidance on how to operate securely in an everyday tasks. So the security strategy may include requirements for users to operate securely, but does not address how that is to be accomplished. And D, of course, D is out. IT auditors do not determine compliance based on strategy, but rather on elements such as standards and control objectives. So IT auditors would look at standards such as and control objectives. So the correct answer is B, which says it provides the approach to achieving the outcomes management would want. Okay. So if we move on to the information valuation and classification. Here we are saying that after relevant information is located and identified, it must be classified by the criticality and sensitivity or business value. Yeah. So classification would then provide the basis for applying the protective measures. We are told here there's the basis for applying the protective measures. And these measures are usually in proportion to the business value and primarily driven by the cost effectiveness of the controls that are in place. So we are told subjectivity is a subjective call. So not all enterprise information is critical or sensitive, not all of it. But then there are those that through determination can be then classified as critical, basically depending on the sensitivity and value of that information. So here we are saying that classification level will subsequently provide the basis for protection, the efforts, and the access controls. So most enterprises will use 3 or 4 sensitivity and criticality classifications. I don't know how many you use in your enterprises, but generally we have internal use, confidential, public, etc. Top secret. I don't know what classification. Maybe do you have any form of classification other than what I've mentioned? Top secret, confidential, internal use, public, general use. Do you have any classification?
We just have 4: public, internal, confidential, and strictly confidential.
Okay. So strictly confidential is the highest classification?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be for who? The CEO only, or CEO and some people?
No, it's defined. It doesn't necessarily need to be CEO. Is, you know, it's more generic who can access it or who cannot.
Okay. Anybody else who has a whose enterprise or organization has a classification of information? I guess you should, yes.
It's the
But how do you
same
classify
lines
them?
as it's around the same for me as well. It depends from organization to organization. But in most of the organizations that I worked for, it was around the same, like what you said, as well as Kasia said.
Okay. Oh, good. So, I mean, again, when you classify, if the classification is done correctly, then it also mitigates the cost of overprotecting unimportant information, and also addresses the risk of underprotecting high-value information. Because, again, classification has to be done properly, so that you don't overprotect what is not important, and then you underprotect what is high value. So you need to know what the information is, and it has to be done. The classification has to be basically done properly. That's what we are saying in the 3rd bullet point, the mitigation cost of overprotecting or underprotecting information. So then policies, standards, and processes must be developed concurrently to mandate the classification to prevent any related problems from getting worse. So the information you've heard about the issue. I think this is the most common one. The U.S. president, former President Donald Trump, and even the current president, there were issues around the information that they carried or was found in their homes. I don't know how they knew that information was there. I was having a thought that that information probably, I don't know what the issue was really. I don't know whether it was because they were not properly safeguarded, but I thought that by virtue of their offices, they needed to have that information. What are your thoughts?
Actually, now I think the organizations are moving towards the data and the digital part. So they also emphasize on the free flow of information, actually, in order to create a better data lineage in the organization, in order to generate the values for their customers. I think whichever classification you mentioned, I agree, but those are all seems to be a little bit, a little bit become ease of now, because in my organization, we still follow those categories, whatever Kasia has mentioned. But of course, there is adaptation happening towards those digital transformation to to emphasis on the free flow of information as well. So earlier days, business objectives, the target setting strategy, and those kind of information belongs to line managers and the senior management. But nowadays, these informations are also being seen by the engineers and the working level employees as well, because to get the proper alignment actually. So of course, the sensitivity becomes from high to medium and medium to low some cases, in order to have a unbiased free flow of information within the organization.
Yes, what I also have noticed is that although we do have the classification in place, it is still possible not to apply it. I mean, whether
Correct.
you use Word, PowerPoint, and so on, you have the option to select it, but it is still possible to create a document and not select any classification. It does not impose that you must. Otherwise, you cannot, let's say, save the document or create a document. That's what I've seen. And another thing is that, as Raj said, you have to, people are digital information flow, so people are distributing documents. And again, I've seen an example where you have confidential documents, but you can still send them by email, for example,
Yes,
where this should not be the case. And again, in Outlook, we have a confidentiality level of the email. So if you select this email is strictly confidential, you cannot then send the information outside of the company, let's say to email addresses which are outside of the company. But at the same time, you don't have to select it. The configuration allow you not to select anything. And in that case, it's possible to send confidential information outside of the company. So I see some gaps still.
Yeah, correct. Because from my experience, I worked mostly in telecom background, like Wasim actually. So, of course, with Huawei, the Chinese company, which I used to work for many years actually. So, there is quite very strict. That means you cannot send any kind of documents, confidential documents, even outside your internal sources, because that's the very, very strict being followed. But while I was in Nokia, it was not the same case, because still in Nokia you're allowed to send the documents to your email those years back, but still you have to loop your managers actually, and those kind of minimal kind of a requirement which is needed actually. So of course, from private to public, I think still we follow the strict level of controls, but within the organization, I think it has become more flexible and convenient to share the data and those informations actually. Yeah, without any kind of internal approvals. Yeah, this is what the current situation. Yeah. Also, I think Huawei also transformed themselves from where I used to work in 2012, and now also the recent assignment in 2021, 22. Yeah, I could see they also eased some of their internal control process in terms of their the security aspect within the organization, not outside, of course. Yeah.
Just adding
Yeah,
to
but
that,
I guess it's yes. Carry on.
Sorry.
Carry on.
Just adding to that, my experience working with a bank briefly as well as another government entity, their policies were quite different from private organizations and other multinational organizations that we work for. In case of bank and as well as for a government entity, what they do is they put the security and it's basically nothing can leave the organization. Even it is so confidential that you don't have a choice even in your email, that you can actually choose whether or not it's private, whether it's confidential. By default, everything is confidential, so nothing leaves the organization per se. In fact, not everyone is even allowed to converse or even communicate using their respective email IDs with external parties. So it's only certain select individuals who are authorized to communicate with external parties. So it varies from organization to organization. But that's not the case with other organizations. And it's not applicable to all banks. It's certain banks who follow such policies as well.
Yeah, I guess it's all about the culture, also the what the
True.
business considers as the value of that information. But I wanted to hear your comments about the issue about the classified data that the former U.S. president and the current president, they were found with there was some classified information found in their homes. Now, leaving the politics aside, and if we are to specify to information risk, my thinking was that by virtue of their positions, it was okay to have those records. Probably it is the safeguards that were not put in place properly. That's what I thought from an information security perspective. What do you think is what are your thoughts around that? Politics aside.
I think there was not enough security awareness trainings that conducted for those individuals. Otherwise, carrying confidential information back home, it basically shows that there was not enough training sessions done over there. Lack of awareness. I think we need to emphasize on creating more awareness in the organization and bringing in that culture of security first.
Yeah, the do's and don'ts. Probably as Trump was checking out of the White House, maybe they should have given him, I don't know whether they gave him a checklist of what to carry, what not to carry, and to confirm whether he has that or not. Because I guess certain information, you come across it by virtue of your position. So, but again, what is important to note, the organizations that have what they call the data leak prevention measures. So there are those, like you said, someone just mentioned about the banks, which, and even Huawei, there are those that are very, they've put very stringent conditions or controls around even the equipment that are used by staff, the records. You don't find records floating anywhere. You don't find paper flying anywhere. Even in the printers, the modern printers that are configured, not to just dispense paper, but to hold them in a folder. And you have to log in with a password to whatever, to access your documents, all those manner of controls. I guess it's all about the culture, the values of the organization, the sensitivities, and even the consciousness around information. Because, if anybody is to collect or gather information about your organization, then it might bring a lot of, especially for the big corporates, it might bring a lot of embarrassment and loss of shareholder confidence or customer confidence in the institution. So I guess it's all about awareness, like you say, training and continuous monitoring. Again, you don't put too much, you just need to balance. But of course, it depends on the sensitivity of the institution. And again, maybe I could give another example of this. There's this guy from, he's called Julian Assange, who, the guy of WikiLeaks, and the other one who gave out classified information about, I think there's a young man who was arrested the other day in the US. Julian Assange is still on the run for 10 years, 15 years. But there's a young man who gave out some information in the US, which was considered classified, and he was arrested. So again, you see all these practical happenings. And of course, it's all about awareness, all about training, all about the correct classification, so that you don't focus on what is not important and apply controls on, fail to apply controls on what is important. So I think that's good discussion. So sensitivity will generally be a more subjective call. The unintended disclosure of sensitive information can have many ramifications. I think I've said that may be difficult to determine with any precision. So when you talk about the data owner is typically the best source of determining the potential consequence of data leakage. So if you look at now the right column talking about valuation, valuation of information is difficult to do with any with precision. But for some information, it can be the cost of creating or replacing it. So in other cases, for instance, the information in the form of knowledge or trade secrets is difficult or impossible to replace and may be priceless. So where the trade secrets, today we have, I think Coca-Cola is still, Coca-Cola has their trade secrets, which nobody in the world knows the formula they use to make their drink. So it's a priceless information. So it is difficult to replace or impossible to replace. If anybody is to crack that code, then I don't know what they will do. Okay, so that is one example. So basically, the one approach of using to determine the levels of value, you could probably create levels 0 to 5 as an example. So 0 being of no value and 5 being critical. So any information categorized as 0 would, be classified as of low value. Anything categorized as 5, level 5, would be classified as high value. So the confidential and the top secret would be categorized probably at level 5. And again, of course, like you said, it depends on the institution. The public service, the military, the hospitals, entertainment centers all have various categories of classification. So any information that is deemed to be critical would be given the highest priority for protection. Another approach that would be useful is to conduct a business dependency evaluation as an indication of value. So it starts by probably defining the critical business processes and then determining what information and assets are used in the process. So the contribution of these resources to make revenue provides a measure of the level of criticality. So it can then now be used to guide for protection efforts. So you look at, for instance, like even in an organization, you would have IT would be one of the critical outfits in the organization because of the contribution to the revenue. I know many would not see it that way, but there's that, it's the backbone. So then it therefore is given a higher level of criticality than say any other department which does not probably contribute to. I know no department wants to say that they don't contribute, but there are those you can look at and say this one is not really a key contributor. So it's at the level 0 to 5. Okay. So we can now move on to the next. So the next one is to look at the ensuring objective and business integration. We've done 1 hour. Do you want to take a 5 minutes break?
Anyone?
Do you want to take a 5 minutes break,
I'm
or
flexible.
you are?
Whatever the group wants, I'm flexible.
Likewise.
Okay, let's take a 5 minutes break so that I also stretch my legs. I've been sitting here since the whole day. Let me just take 5 minutes. So it's just 5 minutes break on this. So we'll,
Sure.
when you come back, just raise your hands. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's wait for the other two. Okay. Wasim, are you there? Good. Raj is there. So I think we can carry on. We all there? Raj is there? Rexy? Okay, so I think we can carry on. Raj?
Yes.
Okay, fine, thank you. I think we're looking at the next slide, talking about ensuring objective and business integration. So here we are saying that information security strategy objectives should also be stated in terms of specific goals which are aimed at supporting business object activities. Yeah. So basically, we talk of
Can I request if you can make it full screen? Sorry.
Yes, it is full screen.
Thank you.
You okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Feel free to just highlight any challenges that you encounter. Just saying that information security strategy objectives should also be stated in terms of specific goals which are directly aimed at supporting business activities. So we're talking about these 7 areas, are there 7 or 6? Where we're talking about the first one being development and analysis of business linkages to uncover information security issues at the operational level. These linkages may basically be established by regular meetings with the business owners for discussing or discussion of regarding security-related issues. And of course, the linkages would provide an opportunity to educate business process owners on the benefits of added security. I mean, the benefits that added security may provide for their operations. So that is the first aspect we look at. The other one is reviewing of the enterprise strategic business plans and reports. So we're talking about audit and steering committee, for instance. They may uncover opportunities for information security activities that can enable or be directly supportive of a particular avenue of business by reducing risk, losses, and potential operational disruptions. So other sources of information to guide security efforts may include change management activities, audit reports, and steering committee discussions. So say, for instance, when you talk about implementing, for instance, things like the public key infrastructure, which enables high-value transactions between trusted trading partners. That comes up as leveraging on remote applications to offer employees the flexibility to work from other locations, reducing expenses associated with the leasing. So you remember, like during the COVID pandemic, employees were enabled to operate outside of their offices just for purposes of enabling business continuity and cost reduction in terms of office rentals and those kind of things. So an effective information security program must be based on an understanding and consideration of all the information streams that are critical to ensuring continuous operations. So that should be catering from the direct linkages that are between the business activities and the goals. So when you do analysis, when analysis are performed, they usually would show possibilities for reduction of errors, either by implementing additional or better controls, or by ensuring that there's redundancy for more reliable automated processes. And we are told most systems that fail are due to human error. So these errors would include things like during data entry mistakes that would be probably avoided by having in place things like range checking or other technical processes or instruments that would help prevent incorrect processing. So instrumentation failures might be addressed by periodic self-tests or having redundancy in place to safeguard against failures. So improving business linkages on an ongoing basis can also be of benefit. It's a beneficial outcome of an information security steering committee, and especially if high-level representation of the major departments and businesses are included. So these are the strategy objectives which can be used to ensure that there's a seamless integration of the business and the IS objectives. So when you talk about the other, one of the aspects we had mentioned earlier was the desired state. And we are saying the desired state basically is a term that is used to denote the complete snapshot of all relevant conditions at a particular point in the future. Yeah. So to have this desired state, or for the robust picture to be in place, you need to have those items as indicated in the boxes, principles, policies, and frameworks. And you find in a number of organizations, policies and procedures and frameworks are not adhered to, or they are not in place, or they are in place, but they are not up to date. So they need to have a mechanism that would institute lifespan in these policies that and the periodic review to ensure they are updated. Because today, you know, with the current trends, there's a lot of changes that have taken place, yet policies have not been updated, or they are not even in place to address those new changes. Okay, and we're talking about even processes. Again, issue about documentation. I know that a lot of organizations are suffering or struggling with the matters to do with process documentation. And those that have not documented them or have not automated the processes, you find instances where there are people who are considered the experts in those departments. So when these experts go on leave, then life comes to a standstill, or you keep calling them when they are away on leave. Does it happen in your organizations where there are people who know everything in the organization, such that if they're not around others cannot work simply because processes are not documented. Do you have such kind of individuals or experiences?
In many years back in the early 2000s, there were situations when our organization did face such a situation where basically process champions, knowledge champions, once they leave the organization, they take the knowledge with them because of poor or lack of backup or lack of proper documentation. So yes, it used to be the case, but not anymore. At least not now.
So
Most organizations,
how
but
did
I
you
wouldn't say
overcome,
for all.
how do you overcome it?
Sorry?
How do you overcome such a scenario?
How do you
How
overcome
do
such
you
a scenario? It is a long
how do
process
you
then.
ensure?
It's basically retraining, because a lot of our systems in the early 2000s were customized systems. So customized systems means it's going to take a longer time for the new expertise to actually learn those systems, learn the gaps or the processes in the system, and then be able to replicate what was done previously. So it is a time-consuming process. But right now, we don't have such a situation in a lot of organizations where people are aware a lot more. There is a lot more awareness in terms of if there is no proper documentation, what is going to be the impact, especially from a business point of view.
I mean,
Yes,
what I
right.
observe,
And
what I observe, for example, is I still observe the situation where the business relies on consultants for certain processes. And then when the consultants leave, they take the knowledge with them. For example, if there's projects, implementations, and so on. So I do observe it in that situation. And from my perspective, documentation maintenance is one thing, but also to overcome a good practice would be to have a backup in place. So for every activity that is being done, that there is a backup person in place that has a similar level of knowledge.
yeah, that's correct. You
True.
find even in institutions that have done business process reengineering, they have the processes documented in not just paper-based, but in electronic form, and available to everybody in a repository. So when you are, say, in a financial institution working as a teller, you're able to access just by a click of a button the processes that would be applicable to what activity you are doing. So then it means basically it is you now to read the process, to familiarize, but then you have the champions and the various events that create those backups so that there's no concentration on one person. I think that's a good observation. So yeah, that's to do with the processes. And then of course we have the issue about the desired state, the future position that you want to be. For you to have that picture, then you need to have good organizational structures in place. And again, this is a challenge in many organizations where the structure as is documented is not what is on the ground. So you find positions are either vacant, positions are either filled by contract staff, positions are either non-existent on the ground, but they are appearing in the organization structure, on the organization structure. Do you have any such experiences?
Well, I did, once again. But it wasn't as frequent. It has happened in smaller organizations where there's lack of proper oversight, frankly speaking.
Yeah, the structure is also not very, it's not very clear, or it's not a representation of what you have on the ground. Okay. Then we also have in place the desired state. It's a point in future. You need to have also clarity in the organizational culture, ethics, and behaviors. Again, we talk about organizational culture, organizational ethics, and behaviors. What is the culture that has been cultivated in the organization? What are the what is considered ethical in the organization, what is considered bad behavior in the organization. They are so detailed in certain organizations, they even go to things like the dress code, they even go to how the men should dress, how the women should dress. I know there's the liberalization today, but even with that, the organizations that have those definitions, how you should present yourself, how you talk to your customers, how you interact even on the phone, how you know, all manner of conducts and behaviors which create cultures in the organization. So even the do's and don'ts, basically, issues about race, creed, religion, caste, all those things are very well defined in certain in a number of organizations. So they are important to consider, which I know in a number of times people tend to ignore them. And where you find organizations that have a lot of staff movement in and out. So when you have so many staff from other organizations coming in, there has to be a proper way of embedding the new staff, because everybody comes with their own culture. So if you don't have a way of bringing this new staff into the organizational culture, you find then the organization loses certain values and behaviors that probably existed at one moment, at one point, such that end of the day, the organizational values are actually lost because there's no one who monitors. People do not care about how to disclose customer information, how to give it out. People are not aware of the requirements of safeguarding customer information, how to treat customers, how to conduct themselves, you know, all manner of, just by the fact that you are dressed in an organization's outfit already expects you to be an ambassador of the organization wherever you go to. So there are certain areas probably you may not want to be seen when dressed in the organization's attire. So those kind of things that is what we talk about here: culture, behavior, ethics. Now things like disclosure of customer information that you come across by virtue of your position. So all that falls into culture, ethics, and behavior. Then we have the information itself, services, infrastructure, and applications. So the infrastructure, it talks about the telephones and all the networks, the routers, etc. The services that you offer and the applications. Then we have the people, skills, and competencies. So again, very important. People are today considered as one of the organizational assets because of the knowledge and the skills and competencies. That's what drives the organization. So all that put together would give you then now the desired future state or the desired state. So we then are told that if we move next ahead, that the desired state, qualitative measures are useful in defining a desired state. Okay, qualitative measures are useful in defining a desired state. So we have, like if I'm talking about the ISACA governance framework, one of the IT governance frameworks. So according to the document called COBIT, it says it can include high-level objectives such as protecting the interest of those relying on information in the processes, systems, and communications can handle, store, and deliver the information from harm resulting from failures of availability, confidentiality, and integrity. So here we're talking about high-level objectives may not provide enough clarity Established approaches provide frameworks to achieve a well-defined desired state. So qualitative elements such as desired outcomes should be defined as precisely as possible to provide guidance to strategy development. For example, specific regulatory compliance is a desired outcome. A significant number of technical and process requirements then now become apparent. Many useful established approaches are available to provide a framework to achieve a well-desired state for security. And this should be, of course, evaluated to determine whether they provide the best form fit and function, best form, fit, and function for the enterprise. So we are saying then it must be useful to combine several different standards and frameworks to provide a multidimensional view into the desired state. So we have what we then now call the IS strategy development participants. So here we have senior management, we have steering committees and executive management. We have the CISO or the CIO and the steering committee. So this shows the participants who are involved in developing a security strategy and their relationships and aligns them with the business objectives. So all these committees, individuals, they need to be aligned with or align themselves with the business objectives. So the business, this arrow that shows the business strategy, it provides basically the roadmap or the basis for the roadmap to achieve the business objectives. So there are many inputs that will be provided, but primarily one of them in this purpose is one of the business objectives will be one of the primary inputs into risk management plans and information security strategy. So the flow also serves to promote alignment of information security with the business goals. So if you look at the flow, then you look at the business objectives, we have the business attributes, the security programs, and the implementation. All that will come up with creating what we talk about as the security objectives. So business processes must be considered along with the organizational risk, including regulatory requirements, things like risk analysis and associated impact to determine the protection levels and priorities. So one of the constant, a constant constraint during the enterprise risk and capacity will be discussed. We'll talk about that in module 2. But here, what we are basically seeing is the way the various participants and how they intertwine, how they link into one another to help coming up with the development of IS strategy. Okay. The other thing that probably you need to be aware of is the linkage, the aligning of the strategy with the business requirement. This is very key. I think I mentioned yesterday about the importance of all this discussion we are having. That is on the security strategy. It needs to be aligned with the business requirements. And how that comes about is we are told that to develop a cost-effective strategy, security strategy, it is important first and foremost to define the business requirements for information security. What are the business requirements for information security? Okay. Then you will want to look at the objectives of information security that will satisfy these requirements. What would be the objectives of the information security that will satisfy the requirements. Then you locate and identify information security assets and resources. So part of the business requirements, alignment of security strategy with business requirements would be then locating and identifying information assets and resources. Then now you evaluate information assets and resources, looking at the criticality that, as we talked about, the information that is probably at a scale of 0 to 5, the confidentiality, categorizing them in a manner that would help you determine what is critical, what is not critical. Then you classify information assets according to criticality and sensitivity. So once that is done, then you come up with a implementation or implement a process to ensure that all the assets have a defined owner. All the assets have to have a defined owner. So that is one of the ways of ensuring that you align, one of the ways to ensure that you have a cost-effective strategy that is aligned to business requirements. So you need to define the requirements, you determine the objectives of the information security, locate and identify the information assets